The 18 Strong Podcast, episode number 138, with Kyle Shea and Mike Napoleon from SuperSpeed Golf.
I feel the need for speed. Ow!
Welcome to the 18 Strong Podcast, where you get direct access to the world's greatest experts on training harder, practicing smarter, and playing better golf. Now, here's your host, Jeff Pellizzero.
What's up, guys? Welcome to the 18 Strong Podcast, where this time we are talking about speed. As you heard from the famous Top Gun quote, which I'm sure I'm breaking some sort of copyright infringement by putting that in there, but one of the greatest lines of all time, I feel the need for speed. We've got Kyle Shea and Mike Napoleon, the guys from SuperSpeed Golf, who you hear about all the time on the 18 Strong Podcast, and we wanted to bring them back in. We had them here on the show, episode number 64, when we talked about overspeed training and what it is, why it works, how it was developed, and how these guys have utilized it to bring that into the system that they've created, which is the SuperSpeed Golf clubs or overspeed training system. And we want to just catch up with them and find out what has happened since they've been on the show, how they have kind of exploded onto the market. And their tool, I would say, is, as far as I know, is probably one of the most used devices and systems that golfers are using to increase their club head speed. They've got over 250 tour players, and that's PGA, LPGA, European tour players that are using their system actively and have seen great results. But also there's thousands of golfers across the world that are using these clubs, and I use them personally. I've used them with clients, and these guys are seeing significant increases in club head speed and distance. Some clients going from like mid-70s swinging average club head speed up into the 90s, which is just crazy. And then with the tour players, seeing improvements with them. And so we talk about all these things. We know that there are a lot of questions about how do you use the system, how do you implement it into your own training and practice and things like that. And then, regarding programming, how does that work? What do you need to do? What do you need to do to start with the system? Are there any concerns? So we let the guys kind of answer all of those questions, tell a couple of stories, and we just dig into the details of the system. I want you to stay tuned to the very end of the episode, though, because Kyle and Mike are super generous, and they're doing a little bit of a giveaway contest. At the end, we'll give you the details and show you where to go in order to get your hands on the contest details. So stay tuned to that. I want to give a quick shout out to the PGA Tour app. If you've ever been too busy to watch golf, which obviously I know you have, the PGA Tour has got you covered with their mobile app. On this thing, it's so easy to stream live coverage. You can check scores, you can look up stats, you can watch highlights, you can keep track of your favorite players. So basically, this thing does just about everything you need, except maybe pick out your own fantasy players for your draft that week or whatever you got going on. But the PGA Tour app is so easy to use, and it's so helpful, so you don't miss any of the action. So you can go and get this in the App Store. You can find it for iPhone, iPad, Android, BlackBerry, all of the mobile devices. So go to the App Store and check out the PGA Tour app. All right, let's get into the interview with the guys from SuperSpeed Golf. Kyle Shea, Mike Napoleon, welcome back to the 18 Strong Podcast, fellas.
Jeff, thanks for having us. We're glad to be back.
Absolutely. So we were chatting. I think to this date, your previous episode number 64, is still the most downloaded episode ever on the 18 Strong Podcast. And we've had guests like Zach Johnson, we've had Michael Breed, we've had Webb Simpson, but SuperSpeed Golf is still number one. And I think that has to be attributed to the fact that every single golfer wants to hit a ball farther, and you guys are figuring out ways to help them do that. So I know that a lot of people have probably listened to the previous episode. They know the story of SuperSpeed. We talk about you guys all the time on the show, obviously. But for those that may not have heard yet your story, just give us an idea of, first of all, why did you create the SuperSpeed Golf system and kind of how it came about?
Yeah, Jeff, I think the big picture, and just to keep it simple, is that we found a type of training that was used in a lot of other sports called overload-underload training that has great positive and permanent results for players in increasing speed and the efficiency of their golf swing. When we took a lot of that good research and furthered it and just adapted it for the golf swing, and now even some other swinging sports that we're going to be coming out with soon. We just launched our baseball set We've got some other things in the pipeline, and able to take that great scientifically based training, figure out exactly why it's working for players, figure out how it's working for players, how to create the best training protocols to associate with it. It was just something that was just a no-brainer for us, because as coaches, we're always about the goal of giving something simple to our players that's easy to do, that fits into the routine, that doesn't take tons of time, and is going to give them lasting results.
I love the fact that you mentioned simple right off the bat, because if there's anything that we've kind of figured out here in getting questions from people, what they want is they want something simplified. Golf and fitness can all be very, very confusing, and you go on the internet and you read something, and one day you read one thing to do, the next day you read that what that last article said was wrong, and so you never know where to turn. And I think that's what has been so great about your system, and why people have been drawn to it, is because it's compact, and they know exactly what they are supposed to do with it, and you guys provide a lot of education around that too. Can you describe like the physical system itself a little bit, just so those who haven't seen it can kind of get a visual of it and how it's used?
Sure. So it's a 3-club training set, and it looks like a golf club, except the end is actually a stainless steel weight. So what we have is a men's set, women's, and senior set, and then 3 different junior sets, all in that 3-club set, and they're based on driver weight. So they go from a 20% lighter than your driver club to a 10% lighter than your driver club and a 5% heavier than your driver club.
And so they take those 3 clubs, and let's kind of back up a little bit. When somebody gets their system, where do they start? Is there, and I'll let either one of you answer this question, so feel free, whoever wants to jump in. Where do you start when somebody gets their system in the mail?
So what we like them to do, Jeff, is get on our website, SuperSpeedGolf.com, and register themselves. It's free. Register themselves to view our training protocol. So you can either download them as a PDF or actually watch Mike and I work you through how we would actually do the training if we had a player right in front of us. So we start out very simply like that. The training is only maybe 8 to 10 minutes, that first one, but we want them to go through what's called the introduction protocol. And all that is swinging each club on your dominant and non-dominant side through 2 positions, which would be just regular golf swings, standing, and then golf swings where you're actually stepping into it just as you finish the backswing. Those of you who played softball or baseball might remember that move where you're stepping into the ball as you hit it.
Gotcha. And I'm going to warn the listeners right now that this episode is probably going to feel a lot like a SuperSpeed Golf commercial, and that's simply because I use the system with my clients. I know these guys very well, and we're big supporters of what they're doing. And I mean, just the massive growth that you guys have had since being on the show last time. I see you guys traveling all over the place, going to different tournaments, working with tour players. Give us a little idea of what it's been like and some of the coolest things that you guys have experienced since being on the show. I don't know, probably it was episode 64, so over a year ago. What are some of the biggest things that have occurred since then?
Yeah, Jeff. I mean, the last year has been explosive for what we're doing. The traction that we've gotten with a lot of the best players in the world is just unbelievable. We actually just hit 250 tour players working with our system, and that's just PGA, LPGA, Champions Tour, Web.com, and European PGA. There's hundreds more mini tour players around the world that are also working with it. I think some of the most exciting things have been getting to work hands-on with a lot of those players and seeing those players get speed jumps just like a lot of amateur players do with the system. But you're looking at a player that's won $14 million on the LPGA Tour that jumps 5 miles an hour in 10 minutes and is going to be able to sustain those gains in a very short period of time of training with the system. Or PGA players that have thought that they've always been stuck in that slightly under the bar distance categories that are now able to really kind of get up into the upper echelons of power. Those have been a lot of fun for us, but at the same time, it's also been a ton of fun to still see players come into our academies. Maybe a player that's 60 or 65 years old that comes in and is worried about just being behind the 8 ball and being 15 yards behind the players in their Sunday afternoon group. And, they gained 10 miles an hour of club speed over a few months. So those have been a lot of the fun times that I've had. I'm sure Kyle has a bunch of others as well. He's been out on the road even more than I have at a lot of the tour events.
Yeah, I mean, it's been great to just be able to work with a lot of these high-profile names. The major tours are fun. A lot of interaction with the LPGA and Symetra players who, if you guys aren't out there following these people and watching them, I mean, they're great players. And I feel like they don't get the coverage that the men's tour gets, but it's so amazing to be able to work with them and the talent level that's out there as well. And then also just, like you said, Jeff, expanding into these other markets. This week we've been working on Malaysia, South Africa, and India. So it seems like every week we're getting kind of a new country, figuring out, all the markets there and trying to get product to the people that want it. We get requests all the time from different countries and continents, just trying to figure out how we can best implement our systems there and get that all coordinated with everyone. So that's been really neat since we've talked to you last.
Yeah, and then we released our baseball set in January, actually. SuperSpeed Slugger is the name of that product. Going to our first few baseball trade shows and conferences has been a lot of fun, too. We actually, in January, went to the ABCA conference out in Anaheim, and we actually had to have a swear jar at our booth for every time we said club instead of bat. So we've been kind of working on our lingo there for the baseball world as well.
Yeah, and I remember the hashtag that you guys had for that was what, Death to Donuts, right?
Yeah, we made a few waves in the baseball world with that one. We gave out a whole bunch of T-shirts, and it's interesting that you still see Major League Baseball players like warming up before an at bat with a donut on their bat. We now know like absolutely definitively that this is not something that helps them create any more speed. Now, from a tradition standpoint and just kind of a normal routine standpoint, a lot of those players are used to that. So I'm not necessarily saying they have to stop, but from a speed standpoint, it just doesn't work. We actually ran into Greg Rose from TPI out at the Anaheim conference, and he was telling us about a study they had done at TPI where they had players warming up with like 2 bats or something really heavy right before, and those players on average lost 30% of their normal bat speed swing on the first swing that they would take after doing that warm up. I mean, 30% is insane. And especially when you're talking about baseball where, you don't get that many chances, by the 4th or 5th swing when their bat speed was back to normal, that player might already be out at that point. So, some pretty crazy stuff going on in the baseball world. And so we tried to make some waves through the Death to Donuts T-shirts everywhere. And I think it's been very warmly we've had a very warm reception so far, even though we've been kind of challenging some of the traditions.
I remember watching that video with Greg Rose and him talking about that quick dip in speed. And, you just picture guys on the driving range that are swinging 2 clubs at a time, just to warm up. That's kind of their normal warm up. And then they go and hit a couple balls and that's it. And, that video made it very clear that, there's a better way. Again, sometimes you're in your routine or whatever, but there's definitely a better way. So you guys have worked with a lot of tour players. You're working with a lot of, recreational and leisure golfers. Have you guys gotten any kind of, or what are some of the biggest questions that you get from, let's say, the 45 to 55-year-old golfer that comes in? What are the biggest things that he's struggling with? And then are there any questions or concerns that you get from them as far as them jumping into your system? Kyle, I'll let you kind of answer that.
Yeah, sure. I think a lot of those guys at that age are seem like they're kind of the desk jockey type. They've got a lot of kind of physical issues, maybe posturally or whatever it is, and they're still wanting to play golf a lot here, and they're starting to be able to really afford it, maybe join new clubs, and they're losing distance. They definitely don't feel as athletic. So they've kind of got a lot of stuff going on there, but one of their big motivations to see us is just, can I get some club head speed back? And a lot of them have done some stuff with club fitting or that. So I think coming to us and seeing the results in our system so quickly is a really big thing for them. I think some of the concerns they have are, will this last? And can I physically handle this? So we get some questions about injury stuff that you and I have talked about, Jeff, and how does that play into the speed training? And, I wanted to go over a little bit about what we do to make sure that everything's taken care of in their physical body. In our protocols, what we're looking at is starting them off slowly. So we don't want them to do a lot of reps to start. So we're only working through 3 reps on each club through each side. So it's pretty minimal. We're not hitting the ground with the swing. So we're actually not getting that impact coming up through the body. And we're preferably having them do it not pre-fatigued, which is a big thing we're stressing to everyone. We want you to do this kind of earlier on in your practice or your gym workout, preferably not during a competitive round day as well. And then also we want them to do some type of dynamic warm-up. So I know you have been, but we've been very closely associated with TPI and a lot of their research and their protocol prescriptions. So we have some type of dynamic warm-up we'll do with them to get them prepared. And then if we can, we love to get them assessed. Something that they can do where they're working through, they've got their exercise program if they can get it. If not, that's okay. But if they've got other tools that they're working on for their own body as well.
Gotcha. So you kind of give them a little bit of a slow entry into it, make sure that they're doing their warm-ups and they're kind of just getting used to the swings first and foremost. And I think that's the best way to do it. And if somebody is in any kind of exercise prescription, if you have an issue or some sort of an ailment or injury already, you have to be aware of that and just be smart when you're jumping into a protocol or anything like that. Are there any specific stories that kind of stand out in your head as far as somebody that made like huge gains that either even surprised you guys or that they were super shocked and very impressed with what was going on?
Mike, why don't you talk about some amateurs and I'll talk about some professional ones?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of them. We had a gentleman come in that was 72 years old who went from like 71 miles an hour up to 90 in the course of about 6 months. Initial jump went into the low 80s, so he got over 10 miles an hour in his initial jump period. And then down the road, when we saw his second jump phase, which we can talk about some of the details of that later, we went up to around that 90 mile an hour range. I thought that was huge. We had a junior player who we actually did a short video with down at the PGA show this year that went from like in the low 70s up to over 90 miles an hour at the age of 13. So we've seen a lot of these like really big numbers coming from junior players. We've seen we've had some female junior players even down into the 8 and 9 year old brackets that have seen 10 to 15% increases in speed. So, I mean, some huge numbers that we've seen from amateur golfers, both on the senior side, the junior side, and then, our common client that comes in. We still see, to date, we're still holding strong with about that, 5% average increase in the first jump period with another 5% gain usually due somewhere around the 4 to 6 months of training range.
Hey, before you jump in, Kyle, to talk about the Tour Pros, let me ask you this, Mike. Why does this work so well so quickly? What is it specifically, scientifically, that creates these huge amounts of change? Because I've seen it too. I've had a 72-year-old client, and he was swinging, out of his shoes, trying to go as hard as he could, and he could only get to, maybe 83 to 85. And then after just, a month's worth of doing it, he was swinging in the high upper 90s pretty consistently, or at least, mid to upper 90s for sure. So what is it that gives us this quick jump, and what then is the important part to keep that and sustain it? And then we'll jump into Kyle working with some Tour Pros, because I know that's a little different.
Sure. So like anything else, it's not just one simple thing. There's a couple different things that really factor in for each individual player. But I would say 80% of the reason that players get the big results and the early results they see is that most players don't train any type of neuromuscular speed training outside of golf or whatever else they're doing. So whether they're in the gym, most people, even if they're in the gym for a couple hours a week, aren't doing, advanced plyometrics or really fast-paced Olympic lifting or things that are going to really work on sequencing the neuromuscular chain and working on that neurological connection between the brain and the muscles. Okay. if you look at our system, one of the main things that we're doing is it's like applied plyometrics for the golf swing. So it's like applied neuromuscular speed training for the golf swing. So it's something that most players have never done. Their bodies have never experienced that type of training. And like anything else, if you're going from basically ground zero, never having worked on anything like this before, the chances that you're going to get a huge gain out of that right off the bat are huge. You're not anywhere close to hitting some type of diminishing returns cycle on this type of training. So it's because it's something so different and so new that again, most players have never experienced. We see huge gains from it right away. And then it's a long time into the training before we see any kind of diminished capacity of their ability to be able to continue to make gains down the road.
Gotcha. And then Kyle, what's your experience been with the tour players? Have you seen like quick jumps with those guys and girls as well, or does that seem to take a little bit more time? And why? Because I would imagine that most of these players are working with their trainers. They're doing the high level stuff. They're doing some of the plyometric type stuff, and even to be able to come in on top of that and still see gains is just incredible to me.
Yeah, so that across the board kind of 5% jump I see with the tour players as well. We can mention some names here, but I mean, we've been with a lot of those high level like LPGA players.
Mention some names. We love names.
So I was fortunate enough and Mike got to work with Nayan Choi this year, Arya and Moria Jutanagarn, which Arya's Player of the Year last year, Inji Chun, Rookie of the Year last year on LPGA. I've been out at just a lot of those events with them working, and then invited to their clubs to work. But I'll mention some males in a second. But yeah, with like Nayan Choi, she went from 92 miles an hour to 97 right away after that. And then she was kind of January, I think we were working with her, or early February. So we're still waiting to see some of those sustained results with her. Also, Julieta Granada was one we saw get quite a big jump. Arya and Moria Jutanagarn got that 5% jump, even though Arya is super fast already, and she rarely even hits driver off the tee. She's a 2-iron player if you watch her, and incredibly powerful.
Wow.
And then also a couple of the males, Scott Piercy has been using it a lot out there, and he was at 113 miles an hour club head speed, somewhere around there averaging, and now he's up in that 117, 118 average, and he's posting on Instagram. You'll see his stuff on Instagram quite a bit, and Twitter. Everyone seems to have seen Billy Horschel, which is a great story for us. He actually just bought it off the website, and he just started using it. So we actually never had any contact with him or anything. But we actually got some of the stats from Golf Channel to see the actual measurements of driving distance from last year to this year. And the first couple tournaments out of the gate this year, he was actually in the low 120s, and he had been averaging, like, the highest he got the year before was 114 miles an hour.
Wow.
Jumps there. And it's a little harder with the tour players to collect, like, those screenshot datas because we're not with them all the time. So we're actually starting to get some of that data, but it's just a little trickier to get the actual numbers from them without them just telling us. So we're working on it.
Very cool. So we kind of posed some questions we told the group that we have, our private Facebook group, the 18 Strong Movement, that we were going to have you guys on, and everybody in the 18 Strong community knows about SuperSpeed Golf. So we want to know what kind of questions they had regarding the system, maybe some of the procedures that you guys use. And one of the questions that we had was just kind of revolving around biomechanics a little bit and kinematic sequence and things like that, and different styles of swing, more of a body swing versus an arm swing. And what would you guys say to somebody asking, does this kind of tie into a certain kind of swing better than another one? Or what would you tell somebody asking questions regarding how it actually pertains to the movement of the body?
Yeah, I mean, I would say this. So the neuromuscular side of it, the neurological side of it, where we're just improving the speed of that response time for the body, doesn't matter at all how you swing the golf club, because it's not changing the motor pattern of the golf club. It's just changing how fast that motor pattern can be performed. So that's that kind of answers that first part of that question about what types of swings are going to be affected. Really, however you swing the club, you're going to see some results from this. Biomechanically, I would say that some of the drills that we use in our protocols definitely promote, a bit more aggressive use of ground force, a bit more aggressive use of rotation in the body. And those things are other areas that certainly affect power. We've found to affect consistency and power in a positive way with many of our players when we can see greater efficiency in, some of the sequencing in a kinematic sequence and the way energy is transferred and how smoothly energy is transferred throughout the body.
Gotcha. So what about a client that comes in and they say, well, I'm really trying to work on my swing. My swing's not great right now, and I want to make some changes. So I don't want to start doing this and just ingraining my old habits. What do you say to somebody like that?
It depends on what their swing looks like. In many cases, there have been a handful of players that have come in, and from an academy standpoint, where we're working on, we need to make some different mechanical improvements to their swing, or we're working on some things in their body that aren't functioning quite well, and we'll recommend that they start the speed training maybe 3 weeks down the road or 4 weeks down the road. From a general standpoint, I would say those are exceptions. Most commonly, the stuff that we're doing in our protocols for SuperSpeed are all going to have positive results from a general standpoint on swing mechanics, on efficiency, on ground force. They're going to have a general positive sense of those things. They're not, so far outside of the realm of kind of what's a good, positive, fundamental golf swing that are going to have any real negative impact.
Something that I've noticed with different golfers that I've worked with, and just talking to people that have used the system, at the PGA show and things, is the fact, again, going back to the simplicity portion of it, is I think a lot of times doing this just gets them out of their head, gets them out of the technical aspect of, oh, where's my wrist here? What's my face angle? And I know that you guys said, Kyle, I believe that at first you had designed it with like a club head on it, but then you guys realized that you didn't want that because people could get super technical. Is that right?
Yeah. We actually found that they would slow down when they did that. And at one point, there was maybe 20 years ago a club out there designed like that, lighter, but it actually had a head and you hit balls with it. Kind of similar concept, but it really didn't work very well. They tried to square the face up. They worked at attack angle, and anytime you were doing that, you slowed down significantly. So when we took that off and just put the weight on the end where you're not thinking about that, it's amazing what they do mechanically actually better because they're starting to become way more athletic.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm looking at in the gym too when I'm working with clients, is trying to get them in touch with their athleticism or teaching them movement skills that is very integrated and coordinated with how they can most efficiently move. So most efficiently move meaning sequencing muscle chains, avoiding injury, and also using things that they'll gain more strength or power from. And I think that's a big thing of using more bigger muscles and, like Mike said, using the ground more effectively to create power.
Yeah,
Jeff, Mike.
Go ahead, Mike.
Well, Jeff, Mike Voigt, who's on the TPI advisory board and teaches for them, did a great study that I believe was published in either Golf Digest or Golf World at one point, where they actually had built Titleist drivers. It wasn't exactly in our opinion, the right weight distribution. They were using a slightly different weight distribution than what our system does. They actually did some testing on overload, underload training with those drivers hitting golf balls, and the results were kind of interesting. The amateur groups actually saw some, pretty good increases in speed. The collegiate players almost had kind of a break even. And the tour players in that group that they tested actually didn't see any increase in speed at all. So one of the things they were showing is that the better the players were, when you're standing over a golf ball and your goal is to hit that golf ball in some direction, the better and higher expertise there was there, the stronger and more ingrained that motor pattern and the speed of that motor pattern is going to be. So essentially, the harder it is for that player to get out of their own way and create a more athletic or faster swing. That study was one of the reasons that we chose not to have a club head on our system that can actually hit a golf ball. Because when we found that, we started looking at those players in those different types of groups too, from amateur to collegiate to professional. And we were seeing a much more consistent jump and much more consistent speed gains with those players when we were working with it completely with swings without having hit a golf ball.
Yeah, it seems like it just kind of takes the mental piece out of being so technical. I have one client that actually says when he goes up to the tee box now, all he thinks about is trying to get the same whoosh that he had when he swings the SuperSpeed clubs, and that's
fantastic.
You know, he tries to get it to just make that same sound or feel like he's making that same sound, making that same swing, which I thought was pretty cool. Now, obviously, everybody that's listening to the show doesn't have the SuperSpeed set, so is there a way that people can do some of this overspeed training without the SuperSpeed club? I know that we've talked about different weighted clubs and things like that. Can you give us any direction on maybe some things that they can use to almost mimic it if they don't have a system?
It's really hard, Jeff, honestly. And one of the reasons that it's really hard is that, the easiest thing that we've seen players try to do is just kind of pop the head off their driver and just use their driver shaft, and then, use their driver and then maybe use another, like an iron in the bag that would be a little heavier than their driver. There's a couple problems with it. I mean, look, it's better than nothing if you had absolutely no other way to get your hands on one of our sets. But number one, the shaft by itself is way too light. Like, your body is not going to recognize that as the same motor pattern as the golf swing. Kinematically and biomechanically, your body's not going to use the same sequence of muscles and sequence of energy transfer to be able to make that thing move fast because there's not enough resistance. It's too light. And then when you get to the irons and things like that, they really are too heavy to be optimal for overspeed training. They're actually there's going to be such a weight change and it's going to be a lot heavier there that the resistance is going to be too much, and your body's actually going to slow down, below those higher or over speeds that you should be doing in the training. So look, if it was one of those situations where I had a player and, that would be what I would recommend to them if there was no possible way they could get their hands on something better than that. But, for basically half the cost of what it's going to be, to get a new driver, which we see people with almost every year, it seems.
That's a good point.
Putting this system in the bag is going to be the way to actually grab some more distance and have that be something that's going to work with you, and you're going to have training that you can do with this system for years. I mean, we have 2 years worth of training protocols now up on the website.
That's awesome. So let's talk about the training itself. We had a question from, I believe it was Madeline in the group, and she was asking about, is there a best time of year or a better time of year, a season, when you want to start implementing this stuff? And then what else do you complement it with? How do you tie it into kind of your training and practice schedules?
Right, and this is a question we get all the time, especially from a lot of our tour players. The right answer to this question is that you really can start at any time. All right. And the way the training goes, as far as how we see the changes happen with this, it becomes almost a routine part of what you're going to be doing from a practice standpoint. So right off the bat, you're going to see a jump. You're going to see a jump in speed, usually about 5%. It's going to take about 4 to 8 weeks for that to become a permanent change, meaning that whenever you then go after those 8 weeks out to the range, your first swing out of the gate is going to be at that faster speed that you saw. Then we're going to see that plateau for a while usually, and then we're going to see another jump down in the 4 to 6 month range. So this is how I would describe this and answer Madeline's question. Is start it as soon as you can, but something that you should be doing at all times is having a good, I call them like yardage honing drills, or different types of drills that you do during your warm-up process, during your practice time on the range, that are all about basically like trying to just dial in exactly how far you're hitting a wedge or how far you're hitting a 9-iron, and trying to hit different shots with those clubs and really learning how to control your ball flight and control your distance on almost a daily basis. I mean, that's something that for our tour players is really, really important, because every time they show up in a different city, they're at a slightly different elevation, there's different humidity. the same person doesn't hit their 7-iron exactly the same distance in every different tournament that they have. It's actually wildly different in all of those different events. So although this system will start to make some changes in how fast you're able to swing that club, if you have the right type of structure around what you're practicing from a yardage control standpoint, it doesn't really matter, because you need to hone that in, pretty close to the round that you're going to play that day anyhow.
That's a great point, because I've always wondered that, especially about the tour guys, because they're so specific on what their yardages are. If all of a sudden they're swinging 5 miles an hour faster, how does that impact them and through the bag? But that makes sense that you constantly assess. It's just like everything else, fitness wise or medical wise. You constantly assess and get better. Kyle, what about in the gym as far as using this protocol or using the system and the strength training and speed training and things like that? When do you implement this, or how often a week should people be doing this?
Sure. So it kind of depends on what phase they're in. If they're in maybe a stability, strength, power, mobility phase. So if you can take that into account, it's good. But it's kind of similar with the golf side. I'm always trying to get them warmed up before they're doing any type of gym work, especially power or speed training. And if I had my ideal, I'd want them to do some type of muscle activation and then some type of stimulation of the neurological system, or proprioception, as some of the trainers might know of as a word, just getting everything kind of on board and lit up so we're ready to go. But I'm periodizing it in very early. So Mike mentioned the word neuromuscular all the time, and I think those that are in the gym that might have done speed training in the past, they'll notice that you can get very fatigued in a different way than you would if you're doing a bench press or bicep curl, in that you're not stressing the muscle as much, but you might get this brain fatigue where your eyes will glaze over, you'll get this sweat on your brow, you just can't quite think as well because you're activating so much more than just that muscle. And so I want to make sure that they're the most fresh neurologically when they do this, so they can get the maximum output of speed in the system or in the training. And so the more you can actually move these super speed clubs in terms of elevating the speed, the more that's going to transfer over into your own bag and therefore become permanent. So we're trying to stimulate that change in the brain to know that it now can move faster. So if they have those gym days, I want it earlier on, and I also want it early on in those practice days as well. So for competitive players, either amateur or professional, I'm also putting it in early on in that day that they're doing. I don't want it after a competitive round, preferably not before a competitive round right away, because they're just adjusting and I don't want to change their speed negatively or positively right before they go off on the tee. So say we've got a PGA Tour player, we'll probably have them do like a Monday, Wednesday type of training, and then maybe after Saturday round, if they want to throw another one in, or if they miss a cut, something like that. So generally, we're about 3 times a week in the gym if they can do it, with a day off in between. And then same thing, 2 to 3 times a week if they're on an on week playing competitively. We've had a lot of questions, well, can I just do it more? What if I did it every day? Or what if I did it 4 times a week? And honestly, we've tested it, and I've had a lot of people try it, and I don't see that actually make them any better, get any difference. So if you're looking out in the gym world, rarely are you going to do speed training, say Olympic lifting or med ball work or plyometrics, more than 3 times a week. And generally you're taking more rest periods as well. So I just want to keep that in mind for people, that this is a high activity neurological training, and you need enough rest to be able to recover for your next session.
Yeah, how much time in between? So, during your protocols, I know you do typically a kneeling, a standing, a step change, depending on where they are in their protocols. Do you recommend taking a certain amount of rest in between, maybe changing positions or switching from right to left?
It's kind of dependent if we're watching them slow down. So if you feel like you're slowing down during the training, either during, just say, between a left-handed and right-handed, maybe just take a little bit more time. But if we see them getting maybe more fatigued than we prefer, I'll give them maybe 30 to 60 seconds in between switching positions, so stay from standing to a kneeling position. But we really don't extend it too long, because I want this to be a very condensed time period to train with, and then you're done with it. So we really don't want it to go a whole lot past that 12-minute window.
Yeah, you want.
This is one of the reasons, Jeff, that we've seen so much advantage to having that little swing speed radar device that we bundle with our products a lot of times now, is that players can actually monitor that themselves. So like if they see that they're up around 130 miles an hour with the green club, and then they get to the next swing position and they go down 5 miles an hour, they might need another 10, 15 seconds of break there because they're just not quite ready to do it yet.
Yeah, I was talking to a strength coach the other day, and he deals a lot with baseball players, and I was asking him about this specifically, like, when do you stop? Like, if you're doing some sort of speed training or whatever, when do you reach that point of no return where they're just not getting any benefit? And he told me very specifically that if you have a 10% dip in speed, so let's say somebody swings at 100 miles an hour, and all planes being equal, say they're swinging with just their driver or with the green club or something like that. If they swing at 100 miles an hour and you see them dip down to 90, he's like, you shut them down. That means they're too tired to go any further, or they're not going to get any benefit from going any further, or they need a longer rest break. So I think that's a very important point to bring up, that you want to be as fresh as possible. So doing it beforehand, doing it early in the morning, not doing it, which a lot of clients tend to want to do it at the end of their workouts, and it's like, no, you're too tired. You can't get faster when you're tired and worn out. Your body just doesn't work that way.
The most common issue that we see with players that start doing this training, amateur through professional alike, is that they don't treat it athletically and aggressively enough. Okay, so these swings, when they're going through these trainings, like you need to be putting maximum effort into each one of those swings and just going all out at each one of them. I can't tell you, I can't even count at this point how many, especially LPGA Tour players, I've had to, basically yell at to just get out of their own way and really just be aggressive and athletic during this training to really see the results.
Yeah, that's a great point, because I've seen you guys even mention on social media, or maybe even in our conversations, like some people will post a video of them swinging, and they're just swinging a little bit fast. They're not like really getting after it. And you got to push that envelope. It's just like lifting a weight in the gym. You got to try to go a little bit stronger than you did the day before. So that's another great point. All right, guys, I know we're kind of running out of time here, but I have to ask you one of the newer questions that we have at the end of the show, which I didn't prep you for. I don't know if you know about this one yet or not, is if golf were like baseball or a boxer walking to the ring, and I'll have you answer this separately, what would your walk-up song be to the first tee box?
Oh, man.
It's a tough one. Go ahead, Guy.
I don't have something that comes to mind either. How many people have said Rocky? I'm sure that
Not
comes
a
up.
one. Not a one yet.
Yeah, I'll go with Eye of the Tiger then. I always identified with Mr. Stallone.
That's a great pick.
That is a really good pick. That's actually the one I was thinking of for golf. I just need it to be in attack mode. So I'd probably go with something just really aggressive, kind of like death metal look. Like you need to be in that mode when you're getting ready to go play golf. Like you are the king of the world and you are ready to just go take down the golf course.
Jeff, something to mention is Mike and I have been out to quite a lot of like long drive competitions, and if you go out there, they're blasting heavy metal while they're actually competing. So there's something to be said for that.
I've seen some of the new promotions on the Golf Channel, and it's almost like they're trying to make it like the WWF, which I think I'm on board, or WWE, whatever it is now. I'm an old school wrestling watcher. All right,
I would say that fits very well in that world.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, hey, guys, I know that you guys have a little promotion that we're going to do together, and you wanted to give the people that don't have the SuperSpeed clubs or the radar or whatever, haven't experienced some of the SuperSpeed system, a chance to get something from you guys, or the people that have already gotten their SuperSpeed clubs. We want to kind of give them a chance to win some swag, win some stuff. So, Mike, if you could, give us a little idea on the promotion that you guys have going.
Yeah, Jeff, we're really excited. So between now and the end of the Players' Championship on May 14th, so until the last putt falls there, we're going to run a contest. It doesn't matter if you purchase the system or not, but there's a couple different things you got to do. So the first thing you can do is purchase the SuperSpeed Golf system with the code 18STRONG. So as you know, you're going to get a 10% discount for buying that set through this community. So if you buy the set, you're going to be entered into this contest. Also, if you've already got our stuff, you've already got the SuperSpeed Golf training system, what we're going to do is we're going to have you throw a post on Instagram. So what we need you to do there is we need you to tag 18 Strong and use the hashtag SuperSpeed Golf and let us know how much speed you've gained in the time you've been working with the SuperSpeed Golf system. Now, what you're going to win is going to be really cool. So you're going to win a few things. So you're going to have your choice of any of our SuperSpeed Golf training systems, any of the 3 club sets on our website. So if you've already got one, you can get one for a friend or get one for your son or daughter or one of the junior sets. You could also choose to get one of our swing speed radars if you don't have one of those. You'll also get a nice little swag kit from 18 Strong. So I'll probably have a T-shirt and some other goodies in there for you. And the winners are also going to get a personal consultation on your next 3 months of training with the SuperSpeed system with Kyle and myself. So we'll go through some of the other things you're doing in your game, what you've done already if you've been working with the system, and how we can kind of optimize that for you for the next 3 months.
That's awesome. And we'll have all those details written out on the show notes page. So when you go to 18 Strong, look up episode number 138, and we'll have all those details there. So, again, if you have the system, you've already been using it, you've seen great gains, you're going to do the Instagram post, use the hashtag SuperSpeedGolf, tag 18 Strong in there. If you don't have the system, but you purchase one using the code, you'll also be entered in the contest. And so that's going to run through the Players' Championship. When the last putt falls, we'll randomly decide on who the winner is and get you all set up for all the cool gear. So, guys, that's so super generous of you. I'm very, very thankful that you're offering that to the 18 Strong community. And I just want to say that, it's been so great working with you guys and getting to know you guys and becoming friends with you guys over the past, 2 years or whatever it's been now. And it's just so cool to see the growth that has happened from that time to now. You guys have so many amazing things that are coming up, some big promotions, different sports. I can't wait to talk to you about some of the different sports and how those things are going. So just want to say thanks for everything you're doing. Obviously, you're making a big impact on not only the tour players, but the everyday average Joes like me. You've sped up my swing for sure and have made my job easier with my clients too. And I know a lot of the fitness professionals have gotten a lot of benefit from using your stuff. So thank you so much for doing the things that you do and for coming on the show again.
Yeah, well, Jeff, you're very welcome, and obviously we'd love to support what you're doing as well. Getting good information out to golfers is what we're all about, and what you're doing with 18 Strong and trying to help people take their games to the next level is just a fantastic movement, and we're very proud and privileged to be a part of it.
Awesome, guys. Well, you know that we'll be in touch very, very soon. And again, everybody listening to the show, we'll have the details over on episode number 138 on 18 Strong, so you can go there to get the details about the contest and how you can get entered again. But guys, we'll catch up in the very near future, and looking forward to many of the guys and girls on the tours swinging the super speed sticks.
Thanks, Jeff.
Thanks, Jeff.
Take care. Thanks for joining us this week on the 18 Strong podcast. Big thanks to the guys at SuperSpeed Golf for coming on the show, but also for such support over the years with the 18 Strong podcast. If you want any more information on this episode, it's episode number 138. You can also go to 18strong.com/SSG for SuperSpeed Golf. And on that page, you can find all the information about the contest, how you can get involved with that again, all the details there. You can also find a link to the previous episode, which was episode number 64, where the guys were on talking about overspeed training. I also want to give a quick thanks to the PGA Tour mobile app, as well as the guys at Red Roller for all their support of the show. Go to redroller.com to find all of their products. And if you want to continue the conversation, join us over on our private Facebook page, the 18 Strong Movement, where we are on a mission to connect golfers, fitness pros, golf instructors, everybody under the sun that knows that golf and fitness is a thing where we got to start working on moving better, getting stronger in order to play better golf. We'll catch up with you next week. Train hard, practice smart, and play better golf.
Thanks for listening to the 18 Strong podcast at www.18strong.com. And remember, train hard, practice smart, and play better golf.